Hello everyone, it's been an amazing moment at the African Regional Convening Towards Women Deliver 2026, and on this table we have amazing young leaders, actors, activists, everything you can call all of us, who have been doing so much great work in amplifying effort on SRHR and GBV. So we have what to say and you have to listen to us. My name is Adek Basi from Africa, Nigeria, and what stood out the most for me in the storytelling for advocacy was how I got to realize more that storytelling is that greatest tool you can actually use to advocate, to amplify the work, to change narrative, and get the kind of result that you desire to get. And what I'll be doing differently after attending this convening is my programming is also going to drive more in terms of driving for youth-focused programming result. Young people are now going to be in the forefront in everything that I do as a person. So I'll pass this mic over to the next person.
My name is Omale Ojochide Joy from Nigeria, and I'm representing Child and Protection Foundation's Girls Movement. So what I learned from policy advocacy with parliamentarians is that advocacy cannot be done alone. So it's better to have a coalition of non-governmental organizations to be able to push forward and work together. And what I'll be doing differently from today is encouraging NGOs to have a coalition for a better push.
I am Chukwuebuka Ibezim from Town Cry Initiative, Nigeria. So in my session on response to anti-rights, so I got to understand, and what stood out for me was how everybody was sharing real-time story of things going on in our different countries. So going home, what I have to be doing, or what I affirm to do more, is to innovate for something that is sustainable innovations and impact. So I pass this mic to Aisha. Thank you.
My name is Aisha Mohammed. I'm with Achievers Ghana. My key takeaway from the storytelling for advocacy is that telling real stories of people is more important, is a better way of sending across messages than just giving statistics. What I am going to do moving forward is to be more intentional about sharing stories of the people and the communities that we serve.
I'm Elizabeth Yewabundu from Sierra Leone. I'm working with All for All organization for children and young people with hearing and speech impairment. So today, lessons I learned about reclaiming leadership in SRH service in community development. And one of my key take-home is not just providing services for deaf girls, but also equipping them with the right information they need about SRH services, because knowledge is key.
I'm Esther Nancy Yamba from Sierra Leone, and I'm working for Network for Children's Empowerment. So one thing I learned in the storytelling for advocacy is that change starts with speaking up, but true impact starts by taking responsibility yourself. So one thing I would take home is, henceforth, I would try to incubate storytelling in my advocacy, and also to ensure that whenever I see something going wrong in my community, I be the first to speak up.
Imaginez un monde où chaque adolescente peut vivre et rêver sans difficulté ou sans crainte. Alors bonsoir à tous, je m'appelle Bagras et je viens de la Côte d'Ivoire. Plus précisément de la commune de Danané. Je suis une adolescente encadrée et accompagnée par l'ONG Siloué, et aujourd'hui j'ai l'immense honneur d'être accompagnée par l'encadreur de l'ONG UGDM de Mans. Alors ce que je peux dire au niveau de la conférence des 2 jours que j'ai eu à séjourner ici au Kenya, c'était pour moi une très très belle aventure, une opportunité énorme de venir ici représenter mes pairs. Et au niveau des connaissances, j'ai acquis plein de connaissances. Au niveau de la santé sexuelle et reproductive, j'ai eu à acquérir beaucoup de connaissances, et j'irai ensuite en Côte d'Ivoire et sensibiliser mes amis.
I'm from Cameroon and I'm representing my organization, Dorothy and Cecilia. What stood out for me is how storytelling can be used to reclaim SRHR. And what I'll be taking back home is the understanding of the fact that true stories do or play a lot in change, in driving positive change, because if you have not lived that experience, you may not be able to give a right story and you may not be able to give proper advocacy. So back home, I will be encouraging storytelling. I will try to incorporate storytelling into every project I will be handling, owing to the fact or being mindful of the fact that lived stories play a great role in curbing down stereotypes and bringing down myths related to SRHR.
Representing Community Voices Network from Kenya, what I learned in my breakout room today about youth leadership in SRHR spaces was that youths are not just participants, youths are partners. And if we are going forward in our programming, in our implementation, in projects and everything, we are going to center youths at the center of everything. And what I personally commit to doing after attending this convention is that even in my community, when we are forming programs, let youths be the first right holders and let them be the first people who are being engaged at every stage of the process.
I'm Adibari Ahmed from Nigeria, working with the Association of Positive Youth Living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria. What stood out for me from response to anti-rights movement is we still have a long way to go in winning, in getting, having a sustainable human rights, but there to a message to the Gen Alphas and Gen Z activists and feminists out there is you are not alone. Everybody is working together to make sure we win this fight. And what I'll be doing differently when I go back to my country is no matter where the fight is, I will always be there.
Morage from Kenya, representing FIDA Kenya. And what I learned today is that there is need to co-create with communities. Because if you are bringing change to the community, you really need to understand what it is that they really need. Are you taking a project there, but it is not part of their agencies? And what I am going to do is to push for projects that really put communities at the center and continue pushing for youths in leadership.
My name is Ubede Dajili from Nigeria, Youth of Africa. That's my organization. I was in the breakout session where we talked about youth leadership and advocacy around sexual and reproductive health. So what stood out for me was the part where youths are to take charge. Youth should be proactive, and that is what is happening now across the globe, across Africa. And that is what I'm taking back to Nigeria to say, let us continue to build the capacity of young people and see them take that leadership position that we so desire.
Is Nasanti Margaret Nakamba, and I am a YAP member from HIVOS in Zambia. What stood out for me in our breakout session, which is response to anti-rights movement, was the understanding of lived experiences of the violation of human rights that the young people are facing, especially those that are part of the LGBTQI community, and also how the anti-rights movement has been able to have dominance in terms of speaking out and also engaging with policymakers. And what I am taking back home is how then we can create better consensus in ensuring that we can have more funding and also be able to channel the funding to something that is effective concerning the anti-rights movement, and also understand how then they are able to move the way they are moving and trickle them down, and also just shape a different narrative than the one that we have, so that they do not continue winning over us.
My name is Miguel. I'm with the Youth Advisor Panel member under HIVOS representing Zimbabwe, and I was in the session on anti-rights movement, and my key takeaway from the session was around funding mechanisms. The anti-rights movement is heavily funded, and it being heavily funded, it's funded by huge corporations, and our movements as activists or as human rights activists is disjointed. We do not have a unit of purpose. It's high time we unify our voice and amplify our advocacy ask, because our asks are disjointed. We all have individual asks, but the anti-rights movement has got one agenda, and that one agenda, they go by it. So ideally, my key takeaway from this engagement was that it is time we amplify our voice, it is time we solidify our advocacy ask and stop being disjointed. Instead, let's look at the intersectionality that exists amongst ourselves and amplify our voice.
I was also in the anti-rights movement breakout session today, and one thing that I really appreciated from that session is learning about just how much there's a big gap between how much the anti-rights movement is funded and how much the feminist movement is funded, and the need to find and develop new and innovative ways to raise money, because capitalism is not on our side. And going back home, I'm gonna really try and find other youth, find other people who are also working in innovation to find ways to raise resources to be able to continue with this fight. And I'm passing the mic to...
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. So for you who have been listening to all the things that we've shared with you, we've just made you also experience the African Summit with us. What will you also be doing differently from all the things that you've heard us said, and also that will contribute to amplifying the effort that you're doing around SRHR and GBV? So watch your comments, watch your response in the comment section. And together we're gonna scream, change called us here.
Because there is nothing for us without us.
Women